Raiders of the Lost Ark wasn't just a movie, it was a cinematic earthquake. A burst of raw, rugged adventure that turned dusty archaeology into a race against Nazis, booby traps, and the wrath of God. But what most people don't know is just how chaotic, risky, and outright bizarre the making of this film really was. Behind that iconic fedora and bullwhip, things didn't just go wrong, they went insanely wrong. From near-death stunts to diarrhea-fueled improvisations and even real cobras on set, Raiders was a production that barely held itself together, and somehow became a masterpiece anyway. So grab your whip, dodge the snakes, and whatever you do, don't open the Ark. It all started with rejection, and a beach. It began, of all places, on a beach. Two Hollywood legends, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, were walking along the shore, trying to escape the pressures of the industry. Spielberg had just been rejected from directing a James Bond film and lamented it to Lucas. "I still want to make an international, iconic, high-stakes movie," he told him. Lucas turned, almost smug, and said, "I've got something better." What he pitched was wild. A globe-trotting archaeologist with a whip, a hat, and a quest for a biblical relic with godlike powers. Not smooth like Bond, but scrappy, mortal, and human. Spielberg loved it. There was only one problem. It didn't exist yet. No script, no studio approval, nothing but imagination. So they made a pact. No studio meddling, no overdevelopment. Just fun. And from that moment on, Indiana Jones was born. Not in a boardroom, but in the sand between failure and inspiration. Spielberg didn't want Harrison Ford. Funny enough, Harrison Ford almost wasn't Indiana Jones. Spielberg feared audiences would see too much Han Solo in him, too familiar, too easy. So they searched elsewhere. Dozens of actors auditioned, but one stood out, Tom Selleck. With the charisma, the mustache, and that rugged charm, he was perfect. He even shot screen tests in full indie costume, whip, leather jacket, fedora, and nailed it. The studio was ready to go, until CBS blocked it. Selleck was under contract for Magnum PI and they refused to let him out. No matter how hard he pleaded, it was a dead end. Spielberg was stunned. Weeks before filming, they had no lead. That's when Spielberg finally said, "I still think Harrison's the guy." This time, Lucas agreed. They called Ford 3 weeks before cameras rolled. And the rest is movie legend. Indiana Smith? Originally, George Lucas named the project The Adventures of Indiana Smith. It sounded nostalgic to him, like a vintage pulp cereal. But Spielberg hated it. "It sounds like a dentist," he said. They tried out names like Montana, Dakota, even Wyoming, until someone offered a painfully obvious tweak. Keep Indiana, drop Smith, and make it Jones. Suddenly it clicked. It sounded ancient, legendary, like it was carved into the walls of a temple. And just like that, history was made. Hell on Earth, Tunisia. Filming in Tunisia was brutal. 130-degree heat, rotting food, swarms of flies. Almost the entire cast and crew got sick. Diarrhea, vomiting, fevers, they dropped like flies. Harrison Ford was hit hard. George Lucas, too. But one man remained perfectly fine, Spielberg. Why? Because while everyone else gambled on local cuisine, Spielberg ate canned SpaghettiOs every single day in his trailer. Hundreds of cans. No spice, no bacteria. Boring but brilliant. The duel that wasn't. One of the most iconic scenes in the movie. Indy casually shooting the sword-wielding warrior wasn't in the script. It was supposed to be a full-on fight. The whip versus sword duel had been choreographed and rehearsed until Harrison Ford got violently ill with dysentery. He was pale, sweating, and barely able to stand. Between takes, he was cramping and shaking. Eventually, Ford said, "What if I just shoot him?" Spielberg paused, grinned, and said, "Let's try it." They rolled. The swordsman did his flashy moves, and Ford, totally in character and totally fed up, just pulled his revolver and shot. One take, scene done. The crew cracked up. Spielberg kept it, and audiences loved it. It became one of the greatest improvisations in movie history, born not from brilliance, but from bowel distress. Injuries and immortality. Ford's bad luck continued. During an intense stunt sequence, he jumped and landed wrong, tearing a ligament in his knee. The pain was sharp and immediate. Doctors advised surgery and rest. Ford refused. He wrapped it, popped painkillers, and powered through. In several scenes, if you look closely, you'll notice he's limping, not acting, just surviving. It gave Indy's performance a raw, exhausted realism that wasn't faked. He was genuinely in pain and still a hero. Marion's fiery moment. Karen Allen, who played the fearless and fiery Marion Ravenwood, didn't just act through danger. She lived it. One of the most intense moments in Raiders of the Lost Ark unfolds during the chaotic bar fight scene set in the frosty hills of Nepal. Bottles are flying, bullets are zipping past, and fire begins to rage across the tavern. But for Allen, what was scripted as thrilling action nearly turned into real-life disaster. During a rehearsal of the scene, Allen was practicing her big escape, ducking, dodging, trying to find her way through the mayhem. But then, something went horribly wrong. A nearby flame, possibly from a practical effect or a tossed prop, caught the edge of her costume. At first, no one realized it. She didn't even feel it immediately. But within seconds, flames streaked up the back of her outfit, growing rapidly and creeping dangerously close to her hair and skin. It was a horrifying moment that could have ended in tragedy, until one sharp-eyed crew member spotted it and reacted instantly. He rushed in, tackled her to the ground, and smothered the flames with his bare hands. Allen was shaken, singed, and stunned, but incredibly, she walked away uninjured. No special effects, no stunt double, no controlled burn. Just real fire and real danger. That raw, panicked energy you see in the final film. The wide eyes, the frantic movement, the palpable tension in her voice, isn't all performance. It's the lingering adrenaline of someone who came inches from disaster. Spielberg, recognizing the authenticity of the moment, kept that energy alive in the final cut. Allen's near miss became yet another chapter in the wild, unpredictable making of Raiders of the Lost Ark, a film where the cast didn't just pretend to be in peril, they often were. And Marion Ravenwood didn't just survive on screen, she survived in real life too. A little singed, maybe, but tougher than anyone expected, blowing up the Nazi plane. For the massive Nazi flying wing scene, they built a full-scale plane, real steel frame, spinning propellers, no CGI. For the explosion, they used real pyrotechnics. Just one take. Everything had to work perfectly. When Spielberg called action, the blast was way bigger than expected. Fireballs tore through the set. Crew members dove for cover. Had anyone been a few steps off, it could have been deadly. But miraculously, no one was hurt. The shot was perfect. And the scorched wreckage? They left it there, a monument to movie madness. Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes? Steven Spielberg wasn't interested in movie magic when it came to the Well of Souls. He wanted real fear. So when it came time to shoot the iconic scene, he insisted on using real snakes, no rubber props, no visual effects, no tricks. What followed was one of the most nerve-wracking sequences in film history, not just for the audience, but for the cast and crew as well. More than 7,000 live snakes were brought in and dumped onto the set, a slithering, hissing nightmare that instantly transformed the soundstage into a reptilian hell. Snake wranglers worked around the clock to handle the chaos. The actors, however, had no such luxury. Harrison Ford had to walk straight through the pit, his boots crunching across a living carpet of serpents. It wasn't just acting, his discomfort was genuine. Ford, famously stoic, later admitted that while he wasn't terrified, it was still one of the most unnerving moments of the shoot. For Karen Allen, who played Marion Ravenwood, things got far scarier. In one shot, she had to crouch face to face with a real cobra, hood flared, fangs bared. As the cameras rolled, the cobra struck. It lashed forward with lightning speed. The only thing standing between Allen and a potentially deadly bite was a thin sheet of plexiglass, placed between her and the snake. It was almost invisible to the naked eye, but if you watch the final cut of the film closely, especially in high resolution, you can see a faint reflection. That moment, that flash of safety glass, is all that separated a Hollywood blockbuster from a real-life tragedy. Spielberg kept it all in. He knew that real fear reads better on film than pretend panic. And he was right, the scene is legendary. Viewers squirm, palms sweat. It's one of the most viscerally uncomfortable moments in the movie, because somewhere deep down we can feel it's real. For audiences, it was a thrilling adventure. For the actors, it was survival. For the snakes, just another day in the Well of Souls. A galaxy far, far away, George Lucas couldn't resist hiding Star Wars Easter eggs in Raiders. In the Well of Souls, etched among the hieroglyphics, are tiny carvings of C-3PO and R2-D2. Not in focus, not explained, just there. On the plane at the start of the film, look closely at the fuselage OBCPO, a coded nod to Obi-Wan Kenobi and C-3PO. For Lucas, these weren't separate universes. They were all part of the same mythic DNA, one hero with a lightsaber, another with a whip. The hat that wouldn't quit. Indy's fedora wasn't just a piece of wardrobe, it was his identity. That weathered, dusty brown hat became as iconic as the whip he cracked or the one-liners he dropped. You couldn't picture Indiana Jones without it. The fedora didn't just complete the look, it told a story. It hinted at past adventures, bruises, lost loves, ancient temples, and near-death escapes. But behind the scenes, that seemingly effortless fashion statement was a logistical nightmare. The hat would not stay on. During action-packed stunts, wild chase scenes, and in the unpredictable desert winds, it constantly flew off Harrison Ford's head. Losing it mid-shot meant ruining the take, and worse, shattering the illusion. So the costume team got creative. They engineered a hidden elastic band inside the hat, snug enough to survive punches, flips, horse chases, and explosions. No glue, no chin strap, just good, old-fashioned problem-solving. Thanks to this trick, the hat stayed firmly in place, even when logic says it shouldn't. It clings to his head during the boulder chase, through the truck drag sequence, and in nearly every whip-swinging escape. But here's the thing, it had to. If the hat ever flew off mid-action, the myth would go with it. The fedora was part of Indy's silhouette, a symbol of cool under pressure, of rugged grace, of fearless adventure. Spielberg knew this too. In fact, the very first moment we see Indiana Jones on screen, he's emerging from the shadows with that hat. It was how we met him and how we remembered him. And when Indy does lose the hat in a scene, it always matters. It's never casual. It's symbolic, a rare moment of vulnerability. But even then, he usually reaches back and grabs it, just in time, as if the universe itself agrees. Indiana Jones doesn't walk away without his fedora. It's more than just a hat. It's a crown, a compass, a promise to the audience that no matter how crazy the adventure gets, Indy will survive it and he'll do it in style. The stunt that changed everything. In one jaw-dropping scene, Indy gets dragged under a moving truck. Most assume it was a stunt double. It wasn't. Harrison Ford did it himself. The shot was inspired by a stunt in the 1939 film Stagecoach. Spielberg wanted to honor it, but raised the stakes. They dug a trench under the road in Tunisia, gave Ford a hidden harness, and rolled the truck. No backup plan. One shot. Ford slid underneath the truck, inches from disaster, and nailed it. That grit, that drag, that wasn't special effects. It was a man risking his life for a moment of legend. Tarantulas. Anyone? In his very first film role, Alfred Molina had to walk through a tunnel with dozens of tarantulas crawling on him. At first, the spiders didn't move. Spielberg was baffled, until the animal handler explained they were all male. So they placed one female on Molina's back. Instantly, the males started fighting and crawling everywhere. Chaos erupted, and Molina stood perfectly still, covered in spiders, on day one of his first movie. Now that's an entrance. Nazi submarine? Borrowed. For one scene, the production needed a Nazi submarine, but they didn't have one. Lucky for them, the German war film Das Boot had just wrapped nearby, and the full sub was still intact. Spielberg borrowed it, slapped on new insignia, and got his shot. A piece of cinematic history handed off from one film to another, and audiences never knew. The scene that melted ratings. No one expected the face-melting finale. When the Ark is opened, and the Nazis' faces melt, explode, and disintegrate, theaters were filled with screams. In 1981, this was beyond intense. Parents complained. The MPAA nearly slapped the film with an R rating. But Spielberg got lucky. No edits, just a warning. That moment helped trigger the creation of the PG-13 rating. It didn't just leave a mark on audiences, it reshaped Hollywood forever. The monkey Nazi salute. One of the weirdest and creepiest moments in the film is a monkey giving a Nazi salute. But the monkey wouldn't do it. Trainers tried everything. Commands, treats, signals. Nothing worked. Then someone dangled a grape on a fishing line just out of reach. The monkey lifted its arm to grab it, and boom, they got the shot. Took dozens of takes, but that chilling moment made it to the final cut. The boulder chase. The iconic boulder chase wasn't just a visual masterpiece. It was an audio one. That thunderous rumble you hear? Not stone. Sound designer Ben Burt layered the noise of a car on gravel, mixed in thunder, and used echo chambers to give it monstrous weight. That boulder didn't just chase Indy, it chased the audience. Reverence for the Ark. The Ark of the Covenant wasn't treated like a prop. Spielberg had the crew lock it up between takes. No peeking, no touching. He wanted the actors to believe in its power. And it worked. By the time they filmed the climactic scene, even the cast admitted the Ark felt eerie, sacred, almost real. The movie that changed everything. Nobody, not even Lucas and Spielberg, expected Raiders to become what it did. It was a nostalgic passion project. Harrison Ford wasn't even the first choice. But when it hit theaters in June 1981, it exploded. Audiences fell in love. It became the highest-grossing film of the year. 9 Oscar nominations, 5 wins. It launched sequels, theme park rides, comic books, a cinematic empire. The ultimate fan remake. In Mississippi, 3 kids, Eric Zala, Chris Strompalos, and Jason Lamb, loved Raiders so much they remade the entire movie shot for shot. Using cardboard sets, fireworks, cassette tapes, and borrowed costumes, they filmed a little each summer for 7 years. Spielberg eventually saw it, called it inspirational, and even helped fund the final scene they'd never finished. Their remake became a legend of its own, proof that one film can spark a lifetime of creativity. Even Indy's jacket had to feel real. The costume team dragged it behind trucks, scraped it with wire brushes, and rubbed actual horse sweat into it. Yes, real horse sweat, collected and bottled. It wasn't about grime. It was about authenticity. That jacket had to look like it had been through tombs and trenches, even the ones we never saw. Raiders of the Lost Ark wasn't clean. It wasn't easy. It was chaotic, sweaty, stitched together with grit and guts. But it became something more than a film. It became myth, a testament to passion, risk, and the magic that happens when storytelling meets obsession. So if you ever ran through your backyard with a toy whip, or still hum that theme song, remember, this story is part of your story too. Drop a comment and tell us, what legendary film should we uncover next? Because in the end, it's not the treasure that makes the story unforgettable. It's the chase.